The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
The rare big news mid-August, Rick Carlisle, multi-year contract extension with the Pacers.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Rick Carlisle, contract extension with the Pacers. Well-deserved for obvious reasons. We'll talk about the why for the Pacers, the when for the Pacers, what comes next as a result of this. But a big day for the Pacers as they once again, for the second time, extend Rick Carlisle, right? And that has been very telling about how this hire and partnership has gone. In 2021, Carlisle was hired, and that should be the end, by the way, of the word retread. Carlisle comes from another team. Some fans hate it. They go from 25 to 35 to 47 to 50 in wins. They are 5-2 in playoff series. A winning coach stays a winning coach. But first of all, they extend him after the 37 win season. And that was a telling sign of the already good relationship the Pacers and Carlisle had, is that pre any success, they identified that what they hoped would happen had happened, right? And that is that they finally, right, after wandering aimlessly a little bit, in the Nate 1 to Nate 2 to Rick transition, and in the this is a Vic team to a Sabonis team to a Tyrese team era, they didn't have an identity. They didn't have a clear way of going either direction, bad or good. And they didn't have a star that could win them stuff, right? They didn't even win playoff games with that previous era team, right? They needed something to guide them. And since they've hired Rick, they obviously had that bad first year. And then they got Tyrese Halliburton, and they got an identity, and they've gotten consistently better and better and better. And so reason one why you obviously would extend Rick Carlisle now is whatever happened 2 years ago. They extended him in 2023, basically right when the season started. Back then, Rick Carlisle did a great job getting the Pacers from off the track to on the track and getting them on a clear direction of growth. And if you remember, that summer was when they, well, not quite that summer, I think it might have been a year before, was when they were talking a lot about 5-year planning, long-term thinking, and all that kind of stuff, which, again, was the right decision, right? And so then they go straight to the conference finals. And so you wonder at the time of the first extension if the thinking was, all right, here you go, Rick, you've done a great job. Now lead the franchise to wins. And look at what the last 2 years have been, right? They go over their over-under 2 years ago by quite a bit, win 47 games. Halliburton is an all-NBA level player, so good that they trade for Siakam, so good that they can lure Bruce Brown, right? They're developing other players, which we'll talk about in a second, and they've reached the conference finals as a 6 seed, and that's where he really reestablishes himself with the Pacers, is winning in the playoffs and looking very convincing in doing so with a style that is unconventional, right? High-paced teams typically didn't win in the playoffs. The Pacers did. They upped the pressure full court. They played their way. They didn't change how they played to traditional playoff norms, and they won. And then the next year, with very little turnover, they still find a way to get better. They get to the playoffs with home court advantage this time. His unique strategy on player minutes, which I wrote a story about, helps them be healthy for the playoffs. His identity that he said helps them recover from a dismal start. That coalesces into a healthy, talented identity team with home court advantage this time. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Cavs. They handled the Knicks, and they're off to the NBA Finals. So first 2 seasons for Carlisle with the Pacers, get him on the track, get an extension. Second 2 seasons, find the success, get an extension. He has met the bar set for him every single time. In fact, I would say in this case, the last 2 years especially, vastly overshot it, right? A fantastic job getting the Pacers to win games, win meaningful games. Last season was the best success season in Pacers franchise history. And obviously it was 1 game away from something way more. But like that, you want to keep that together for as long as possible. I don't need to explain the Rick Carlisle resume to you, But it's, to me, even easier to talk about why this extension makes so much sense when you talk about the first one and how they continued that crescendo up and up and up and up for all these years. Now, I will never forget his first season 3 years ago when they did go 25-57, and they were not very good. And Carlisle was hired to turn that era of team around, the team with Sabonis and all those players. And I'll never forget it. They're playing the Heat pretty early in the season in Miami. It's a TNT game, right? A rare national TV game for a not particularly good Pacers team. This game is December 21st. I would love to go back and figure out what their exact record was at the time. I want to say they were like 10-15 or something. And Carlisle had talked about, like, at that time, a lot of the talk had been like no edict on like you have to win or requirement of winning or anything like that. But, you know, they clearly were not having the record that they hoped to have. And then they lost. Jared Greenberg reported on the broadcast that night that Carlisle said he came to Indiana to win, right? And that was the first time that had been like very clear that they hoped with the double bigs and the Brogdon that they could be a winner. They lost that night, and then they won 2 of their next 12 games, and then they won twice in a row, then lost 3 in a row, culminating in the Charlotte Hornets scoring 158 points in Indy, and they had a bad record. They had an embarrassing home loss to a bad team, and they pivoted directions that day. And so those first 49 games through that Charlotte game, things were not great. And then things have been just fantastic in the trend line for the Pacers since then. And so the wins have come. Carlisle's been a big part of that. And the other thing, the reason I bring up that story is they had to pivot to a bad team at that point. And Carlisle was brought in as this winning coach he's been talked about as very malleable. He's had different teams with different styles and all that. But very few thought of him as a development guy, right? And a guy who was, reluctant at times in the past to play rookies. I remember reading a story from Tim McMahon and ESPN about how it was such a big deal years ago that Justin Anderson, former Pacer, got minutes under Carlisle in the playoffs with Dallas, right? That was atypical. And some players in the past, Tayshaun Prince obviously played as a rookie under Carlisle in the playoffs, but he's talked about how Luka, of course, changed his thoughts on playing young guys a little bit. But that is what made Rick different than what the coach that many expected when he got hired, which was this great wins coach, win the games guy that was talked about on that broadcast that Jared Greenberg talked about. And what's made him the coach that's been so good for the Pacers, beyond all the stuff I've already said, the winning, the malleability, the constant growth of this team, is he has become he and his staff, I would like to give everybody credit for this whole thing, have become awesome at player development, right? I'll never forget it. Jalen Smith did his press conference after they re-signed him and they did the Pacers colored pen and all that stuff. And we're talking to Carlisle off to the side because Jalen Smith came to the Pacers and was not good with the Suns and had all these restrictions on re-signing. And they talked about all this stuff that they hoped to do to keep him around, and they did, and they offered him starting spot. And Carlisle talked that day about working with Jalen Smith and helping him become a better player, and how much he was really enjoying and falling in love again with, not that he didn't love it before because he loves coaching, but how much he was really enjoying that part of coaching, right? One-on-one work with players, skill development and growth with players. And Jalen Smith resigned and was quite good at times for the Pacers. And then he gets a bunch more money to go to the Bulls, and he's gone now. But that is what has made Carlisle go from really good winning coach to just like fantastic all-around incredible head coach for the Pacers, is that he's developed too. He's developed players as well, both in terms of guys coming from other teams, coming to the Pacers and either getting better or being a perfect fit in their style that makes them good. Jalen Smith is one of those guys. Tyrese Halliburton is one of those guys. Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, Jordan Nwora, even. I mean, you could talk about lots of guys who theoretically fit that bill, and that's just young guys. Like even that, Pascal Siakam got better, right? He's a better defender. He's a better shooter now than he was. Like you could extend that thinking to vets. Jay Huff and James Wiseman will certainly hope they're the next, even though in Wiseman's case, he was not a traded player, right? Development extends to young guys. Andrew Nembhard has gotten better being drafted by the Pacers. Isaiah Jackson has gotten better being drafted by the Pacers, right? Matherin and Walker have gotten better, maybe not at the rate some thought because of their draft slot. Ben Shepherd certainly has gotten better, right? And so we'll see what happens there, looking good from year 1 to 2. So Carlisle not only bringing wins, constant growth of wins, 50-win season for the Pacers, hosting a series for the first time in over a decade. You don't count the bubble year because they didn't actually host the series. Getting them through rounds of the playoffs, and at the same time, really leveling up as a development coach. What more could you want, right?
Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, on drinks, on merch, on a bigger group if you want. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. Gametime has last minute tickets and zone deals for big savings like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matches. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Luka Doncic lights up Great Britain.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
It was not a surprise to see Luka back on the floor. We actually talked about it on Tuesday's show, Andy, that Luka was back at practice for Slovenia and expected to play against the British on Tuesday. And that he did. And so the injury was obviously not that big of a deal, the injury scare over the course of the weekend, but it was still not only good to see Luka on the floor, but then turn around and play a strong game against the Brits. 21 points in the first half, 28 overall. He had 10 assists and 6 rebounds, made it to the free throw line 14 times. That's where he ate most of his production. I don't know. He ate. That's where he ate.
But in a good way. So it's clear Luka ate in a good way.
Yes, that's true.
He's made so much progress this offseason. I want to make it very clear. This was positive eating for Luka.
Right. This is the sort of thing that he's supposed to be eating.
He's allowed to eat like this.
The dreams and hopes of the British. And so had Luka been able to hit a shot from the perimeter, he was 2 of 11 from 3-point range. So not terribly efficient there. Had he been able to do that, he probably would have been, I don't know, somewhere in the 40s before he sat down. He didn't even need to finish the game. So a strong effort for Luka Doncic. Thus far, it hasn't gone great for Slovenia in terms of their results in the ramp up to the Eurobasket competition. But Luka himself has played pretty well, particularly considering the long layoff and the fact that he gets a tremendous amount of attention from opposing defenses.
Yeah, truth be told, because you mentioned the 2 of 11 from behind the arc, while it's going to be better for Luka in the regular season, the regular NBA season, I should say, like the games that Laker fans are truly most concerned about, I kind of feel like in some ways Luka's 3-point shot, when it is on, and particularly with the step back, it is deadly, but I don't consider it the strongest part of Luka's game, in all honesty. And if that's the part that is cooperating the least I don't even want to say it's a ramp up from his offseason, because he spent his offseason working his ass off, but he didn't do a lot of basketball. So I'm sure there's some fine tuning going on. But if that's the part that is clicking least and we're getting everything else, then that seems really promising to me. I attempted to watch the game using FIBA's Courtside 1891 website, and for whatever reason could not get through. So I was not able to see anything other than just what was on the web, but the general consensus was that Luka looked great, and the clips that I saw, he looked great. I also want to use this as an opportunity because a couple shows ago when we were talking about Eurobasket and my lack of knowledge, previous indifference towards it, I said
Monday's episode is what we will refer to now as the Andy's an ugly American episode.
Sure, whatever. I mean, but here's the thing. First of all, I'm never ugly. But secondly, I don't consider this even stereotypical ugly American, because as I'm going to explain, I'm going to read a pinned comment that I had in the YouTube comments section for the show. And we always invite the feedback. We always invite the comments. We want to hear from you. There were a couple things that I had said in terms of, I had suspected that Luka, the enthusiasm for Slovenia and Eurobasket was going to be largely about Luka fans from Slovenia, and got a lot of correction with that and some other stuff. So I'm just going to read verbatim what I said to our audience and the viewers, because I felt it was worth mentioning. It's very clear that Luka fans from all over Europe get excited to watch him in Eurobasket and other comparable tournaments, as opposed to merely the Slovenian Luka fans. We, or at least I, assumed more of a pure Slovenian home country fervor, but that's apparently not the case. I remain confident about our assertion that most American-born Laker/Luka fans are not as inherently invested in these tournaments, but it's still great to learn more about Luka's international fan base and cultural consumption of basketball. Second, so it's clear, and the lack of clarity is on us, not the audience, neither of us was disparaging the quality of Eurobasket in explaining and joking how little we actually know about the tournament, or how little interest we've paid to it pre-Luka. As I've said on many previous shows, I've always been an American-based league sports fan, rather than somebody who seeks out sports everywhere I can get them. And because of that, I have not watched something like Eurobasket, and I have not bothered to learn anything about it. And this is not xenophobic or jingoistic in attitude. I'm largely indifferent to Americans competing in the Olympics, because again, it's not a league. Brian is largely the same as well. That indifference, though, is not a commentary on the quality or importance of these settings, just transparency. We don't pretend to be what we're not to please our audience. We'd rather be honest. All that said, we will cover these games to the best of our abilities. It's not always easy, given the time difference and other factors, editor's note, like FIBA's website. But again, we will try either way. Felt like this was worth clarifying, because it understandably rubbed some of our audience the wrong way. So we're going to learn more about it. We're going to learn more about Eurobasket. We're going to learn more about Luka culturally. And honestly, it's really awesome. I actually think this has been something that I found really fun, like learning the worldwide audience for Luka Doncic.
You guys can all treat Andy like he's a small child discovering the world for the first time, a babe in the woods of international basketball.
I am a babe in the woods of Eurobasket. I will be the first to admit it. I don't know jack bleep about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's yeah, I mean, it is true. I'm not a big fan of. I don't care if the U.S. wins the Olympics or things like that, because I don't really wrap my national pride in the success of our basketball program.
No.
And the rest of the world is really good at this. And I mean, I watch Olympic basketball especially when the Olympics take place in time zones where it makes it a little easier. But
and when American or just NBA players in general are in it, like USA Spain in 2008 was awesome, because it was basically an NBA game,
right?
Like from my perspective, that was a great game.
We would watch when Kobe was playing, or LeBron, or AD, or guys like that, because it's for. But like, if it's I miss games. I'm not gonna lie about it. But it's one of these things where multiple things can be good at once. Where most Lakers fans, I think most Lakers fans have not to this point been Eurobasket fans. Most Lakers fans, I think, if you pin them down, not that they would say Luka shouldn't play for Slovenia, because I think basketball fans generally recognize not only how hard it is to tell players of any nationality you can't play for your national team, but particularly players like Luka, who represent smaller countries with smaller programs and understand the value and the importance that they play inside not just their own basketball programs, really inside their own nation, in ways that transcend sport. Like, they take this obligation seriously. You can't tell them that they can't do it. All of that said, if you could pin down most Lakers fans and say, would you prefer Luka play, and however small the injury risk might be, allow that to happen, or skip it this year? Why don't we just skip it this year? Most Lakers fans would say skip it this year, in the same way that a lot of Lakers fans didn't want AD to play or LeBron. Let somebody else win a gold medal. So all of those things come in. They're going to be nervous watching it play. None of it means that it can't be fun. Like, it's still fun to watch the Olympics. It's still fun to watch this stuff internationally. It's still fun to see Luka play well. And so, it is a thing that we will certainly be talking about on this program for as long as Luka is competing in it. And then when it's over and Luka has gotten through it playing well and not hurt himself, we will all breathe a sigh of relief and move on to the next thing. So congratulations to Luka for a good tune-up against Great Britain. And I believe that the last one before the real competition starts, or they have one more?
Remember, I told you I couldn't get on their website. I couldn't get that information.
So someone can, in the comments section, can tell us how many more of the tune-up games they have before the competition begins. And by that point, Andy and I will both have figured out how to make that app from FIBA work.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
John Wall officially announced his retirement.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast.
John Wall is no longer an active NBA player. I know he wasn't on the team, but what he meant to this city, I can't wait to break it down. But may he enjoy retirement. John Wall was a DC legend.
Well said, my friend. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. A little bit of a different style of episode today because typically we don't talk about historical topics on this channel. We're usually looking into the future, what we have building here in Washington, but one of the building blocks that was drafted back in 2010, the number one overall pick, John Wall, the man who transcended the way people feel about basketball in the D.C. area. He officially retired today. He announced it himself. Glad to finally see him reach the point of retirement where he can really sit back and enjoy and reflect on the incredible career he had. We're going to talk about his legacy that he left in a Wizards uniform, but not just as a player, but a member of the DC community, why he is one of the most influential members or influential athletes in DC sports history. How should the Wizards honor him? We'll talk about that in the next segment. And then the third segment, we'll just keep things on the basketball topic of the Wizards. Are we sleeping on Justin Champagnie? I feel like we haven't shown enough attention to him on this channel as of recently, but AB, one thing that's for certain about this, that if you're a Wizards fan, that's around our age. You and I are both the same age. I just turned 22. I believe you'd probably turn 22 a little bit before me, if I'm not mistaken. This news hits real close to home because you and I became Wizards fans because of John Wall, a guy that ultimately just took the city and put it in the palm of his hands. He had everything going for him. At one point in his career, he was the guy that made you want to turn the game on. Even through the first couple of years of his career where the team still wasn't any good. They went through still some pretty tumultuous years. They still had bad management for the most part when John was drafted in 2010. But boy, did things really change a couple years into his tenure. They finally made a playoff appearance in the 2013-2014 season, and things really took off from there. His legacy on and off the court is one that will be remembered forever by Wizards fans and by people around the NBA. You could see the reaction from members of the media that have covered the NBA for a long time, other NBA players that played in the same era here as John Wall, some of them that still play today, obviously, that didn't have some of the unluckiness that John Wall did in terms of injury, showing him love today, talking about how great they thought he was. It's just really interesting to see the reaction that we've got around the whole world of sports with this news today, AB.
Yeah, I was at work when I saw the notification, and in a way, my heart kind of dropped. It was like, man, John Wall really is officially done playing basketball. I was joking about the fact maybe bring him back to DC. We saw Dame go back to Portland. Oh, why don't we do it? But it's something because, again, like you mentioned, this is a guy that I started watching basketball because of him. The 360 layups, the no-look passes to Marcin Gortat. Him and Bradley Beal were like a best friend duo at one point. Remember that post-game interview against the Suns? It was just so many iconic moments. The Dougie as a rookie. I mean, that's just like, it's just like John Wall. He was a guy that brought the community together. I don't know if you remember, Ben. I think it was in 2014 when the girl, 6-year-old girl Maya, passed away. I think she had leukemia, and he was crying in the post-game interview with Chris Miller. I mean, when Chris Miller was a sideline reporter, and that was pretty emotional, and went out there and win a double overtime game against, I think it was the Boston Celtics. It was just moments like that where the city was behind them. Verizon Center at the time was just electric. It felt like, man, we have a really good, I don't want to say superstar, but borderline superstar because of what he did off the court and on the court. And it's crazy. If you're a Wizards fan right now and think that this guy is overrated in some sense, or do you think a lot of Wizards fans like us at this age think that we're overhyping him? You just don't understand what this man went through when he was a rookie. Those, like you mentioned, those years where this team was just not good at all, was an embarrassment off and on the court. And he was here during the bad days, but when the good days came along, I remember that Bulls series when Jimmy Butler and they went at it. Paul Pierce and the Raptors, you sweep them 4-0. And every time the Wizards played the Cavs, it was competitive. It was just John Wall will forever have a place in my heart. And the number 2, I know we're going to talk about it. In my opinion, and I know a lot of people are not going to, maybe not a lot of people agree with it, but I think it deserves to be retired. I understand nowadays the Hall of Fame, it's too oversaturated with mid players. I don't think John Wall is a mid player. If you contribute everything from what he did on the court and off the court, and what he meant to DC, I think he wanted to retire a Wizard, but that the management just handled it their certain way. I still think the Wizards should have rebuilt after the draft, or that traded John Wall. I think they should have traded Brad, but I mean, that's a different topic for a different day. But going back to John, Ben, it just feels so surreal because this is a guy that was my favorite player, and the left-handed dunks, he was so ambidextrous. He was so good at dunking with his left hand. It was insane. The posterizers, I mean, he was just something to watch, and I can't stress it enough. This guy was literally my favorite player when I first started watching basketball.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about how the Wizards should honor him, but we'll save that for the second segment here. What I wanted to really nail on the head of this first segment is that I don't think enough people give John credit for being one of the most influential athletes in Washington, D.C. sports history. And I know D.C. has an illustrious history of figures that are iconic that go back to the 1920s, the workhorse Walter Johnson. I mean, you could really go deep into the bag of just athletes in the D.C. area that meant a lot to the community and were ultimately championship-level players or just players that changed the way people look at the sport. I mean, if you want to go deeper into some of the talent that have been on some of the other teams here in D.C., I mean, think about Jerry Smith for the Washington Redskins. Guy pretty much revolutionized the tight end position. But in terms of the impact that John Wall had on the D.C. area, I think you could make the argument that him right up there with Alex Ovechkin, those two may be the most influential athletes in DC sports history because those dudes played in the same building and they just put butts in the seats. There weren't people going to Wizards games like that. There wasn't an energy around this team before John Wall was there. I know you had the Gilbert Arenas couple of years there where maybe there was a little bit of excitement, but didn't quite last. John Wall was a guy that got people into basketball in this town. He embraced the way this city embraced him. I think that meant a lot to him. There's a reason why his time in D.C. was so special to him because he could feel the love that he got from this fan base, from people around the NBA that admired what he was doing for the Washington, D.C. area. You know, the volunteer work he's done within the community, the relationships he built in this area. Just super, super powerful in terms of bringing people together, getting this Wizards community together. Because I think you'd make the argument that a lot of fans that exist today that are watching this video right now, unless you're a little bit older and you were way into the team before John Wall was even born, perhaps, you probably became a Wizards fan because of John Wall, because of those years and what they meant to you. And I know they're just so near and dear to our heart that I just think we got to give John Wall a lot of credit in terms of his legacy, not just as a Washington Wizard, but a DC sport athlete. You can put him up there for the Mount Rushmore of just influential figures. I know, you know, what we've talked on this channel, you got to buy a lot of stock into players that win championships and all that stuff. But for this conversation aside, I'm not even going to discuss winning championships because Wall got this team closer to the Eastern Conference Final than it had ever been. Really in the time since it's been to the Eastern Conference Finals in 1979. They haven't even sniffed that kind of success, and they were a game short in 2017, a year where John Wall was on the All-NBA third team. And just from all of that, when you just look back on the career of John Wall, he's just a guy that's going to be remembered for everything he did for this community. There's a reason why it hit so hard when he was traded away from the organization, even though the writing was on the wall for it. Because I could remember vividly where I was when this happened and how exactly I felt. It was 2020. It was peak fall COVID or whatever. I had just started working a job at Jersey Mike's, and I was sitting in there working my Jersey Mike shift, and I got the notification saying that John Wall had been traded to the Houston Rockets and Russell Westbrook was coming to D.C. I was like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea how to process this information. But this doesn't make any sense to me. This is the reason I'm even a Wizards fan right now. Is because of John Wall, and now he's just gone. So that kind of taught me from a younger age, I guess I was 16, 17 at the time, that you can't get too emotionally invested in the players that you have on your team because they can be stripped from you at any moment. I know as a Washington Nationals fan, you got to expect that your star players that you come to love will probably leave at some point. But never expected that with John Wall, and they did pay him. They made him one of the highest paid players in the NBA, and just unfortunate luck with the injuries, and he had terrible management with him as well, so they were unable to build a legitimate championship team. They were always just a piece away, is really what the bottom line is. If they actually did go out there and get KD in 2016, man, that team probably wins an NBA championship. And I know it's like you don't really want to hear about that right now, but John Wall meant everything to the DC area. That's the main takeaway from here, is that his influence he had on just people who were sports fans in the DC area cannot be undermined. One of the most influential to ever do it in my eyes.